Hello and welcome to this tutorial to help you learn about creating Workbooks reports. In this session I'm going to talk a little about the different parts of a report, or what we sometimes refer to as the anatomy of a report. As you can imagine, reporting is a really big topic and it's helpful to understand the terminology, so I'm going to work through a few slides to look at some of the key terms. After we've looked at the slides to give you a bit of an overview, I'll go into Workbooks to show you what I mean in a real situation. Like other records in Workbooks, reports have a number of different tabs which we call report views. The first tab, which is called Report, is where you give the report its name and a really good description. You can also give the report a category to make it easy to group similar types of reports together. And you can share the report with other users using the padlock symbol that you see throughout Workbooks. How you choose to share your report can have an effect on security, so I'll talk about that a little bit later, and also the other fields that you can see on here at the moment. Workbooks reports can have multiple views, and the first one is always the Details view. The Details view is simply a list of records, a bit like a grid view on a landing page. This tab is further split into 4 tabs, one called View, which is where you can give your view a name and a description. The one that's highlighted on the screen at the moment, Columns, where you define which columns you want to include in your report. Each column represents a field in Workbooks or a calculation. The third tab is a Criteria tab. This is where you can add information to control which rows of data appear in your report, very similar to using filters on a grid view. And the fourth tab is Automation. If you need to, if you want to, you can set up automated processes that use scripts that run against records in a report. In addition to the Details view, reports can have one or more summaries. Summaries allow you to group or summarize your data so that you can add in counts or subtotals, averages, maximum, minimum, those sorts of things to the groups. You can also introduce what we call split columns that separate your data into different vertical buckets. Many people liken the things you can achieve with Workbooks summaries to pivot tables in Excel. Another form of report view is a chart. These can be bar charts, pie charts, line charts or dial charts, and they can only be generated from summary views. I'm going to open up Workbooks now to have a look at reports there. Here in my screen is a dashboard, which is simply a collection of reports and charts. This is just to give you an idea of what you can achieve with reports. From a dashboard you can open an individual item using the arrows in the top right hand corner, so I'll open this one. This one's a chart, but from here I've also got a button where I can open the report itself, so I'll do that. If you look at the blue column on the left hand side here, you can see that there are a number of views like you would see on a landing page in Workbooks, including, if I scroll down slightly, some chart views. The first view up at the top here is called Details, and when I click on it you'll see that the information on the right hand side changes. We're currently looking at this report in output mode, if you like, but if I click on Edit to open it up, this is starting to look a little bit more like the screenshots that I showed you in the slideshow. In common with every record in Workbooks, there are a number of tabs across the top, which in this case represent the views that we just saw in the left hand column. I'm going to open the leftmost one, the one called Report. A report can have one or many views. The Report tab itself shows high-level information about your report, including its name and a description. I really do recommend that you give your reports a good description to help the audience understand what it is they're looking at. It would also be really good practice to develop a naming convention for your reports that's understood across the business. Further down here, under Category, as I mentioned earlier, you can categorize your reports if you like, and here we've got categories for different business functions, but you can create your own. Over on the top right here there's a section called Sharing. You can choose to run the report as the current user, which is what's showing at the moment, or you can use the drop down to change this to Report Owner. If you've used advanced security in your database to restrict who's got visibility of various records, be careful of the option that you choose here. Run as current user means that whoever views the report will only see the records they can normally see. But if you change it to run as report owner, they'll be able to see everything that the report owner can see, which might be more or less than they can see normally, depending on how you've set up your permissions. If you don't have advanced security in place, you don't even need to consider this. It'll just always run as current user. Further down the screen under Visibility, you can see that the check boxes down here, the information in bold, matches the name of the views on the different tabs across the top. If you take the tick out of any of these checkboxes, that view won't be available to your users when you've shared the report with them. I'm going to open the Details tab now, this second one in. Every single report that you create in Workbooks will have a Details tab, although you can change the name of it if you want to. The Details tab lists all the data that you want to see in your report, even if you want some of the data to be in one of these subsequent views and a different part of the data to be in a different view. It's all got to be there in the Details tab. The Details tab itself is split into 4 tabs. So we've got View. This is where you can give your view a name, and you can also see what record type it's based on, in this case Opportunities. Then there's the Columns tab. This is where you build your report by adding columns in. The screen is split into 2 areas, as you can see, and if I click on Load Preview, that's what we get, a preview of the report. You can drag this blue bar up and down if you want, or if you just double click on those little 3 dots, it drops down to the bottom and collapses so that you can see the names of all the columns that you've added to your report. Notice at the moment we're looking at this in edit mode, but if you see this amount column down at the bottom, there is a total of 3.6 million or thereabouts. You can add totals to details reports, but you can't group those totals, subtotal them in any way. The next tab is the Criteria tab. As I said earlier, criteria are a bit like filters on a grid view. They allow you to control which rows of data appear in your report. Any criteria that you apply to the details report will subsequently apply to all the summary views, whether they're ones that have already been created, like the ones we can see here, or any new ones that you add later. Finally, the 4th tab is Automation. As I said when covering the slide deck, you can set up automated processes using scripts that refer to the data within your report. I've reopened the Columns tab here, and I can just use the Add Column button to do exactly what it says, add a new column to my report. I can use the drop-down option here and just select from what I'm seeing, or if you know the name of the field that you actually want to add in, just start typing it and then choose from the options that you're provided with here. So I'll click on Name and Save and Close. And when I refresh my preview, that column will be over here on the right hand side. I can drag and drop that to another place in the report if I want, just in the same way as you can when you're customizing grids anywhere else in Workbooks. So I'll drag that all the way over here. If you do drag and drop things around, do remember to click Save, otherwise the next time you open the report, the columns will be back in the order in which you added them. It's really helpful if you've spent some time planning the layout before starting to save you having to drag and drop things around. If I just return to the Criteria tab for a moment, you can see that a couple of criteria have been added to this particular view. The criteria work in conjunction with each other, by which I mean there's an AND join between them. So both of these criteria are in place. There is a way to add an OR criterion using what's called calculated criteria, and that's covered in a separate tutorial. If I wanted to add an additional criterion, I'd simply click on the Add Criteria button and specify from the pick list or type ahead what it is that I want to limit things to. Maybe I want things that have an amount in excess of 10,000, for example. Remember though, all the criteria in the details view are subsequently inherited by the summary views. So in this report, I'd end up changing 8 different views, which might not be what I want. I'm not going to open every summary in this session, but I will open this one, Performance Year to Date. You'll see here that there's a row for each sales rep and a subtotal for the amount each one of them has sold, as well as a grand total at the bottom. This total is considerably lower than the one that we saw in the Details tab, which was a little over 3.6 million, because in this summary an additional criterion has been added. This summary has a criterion in it that says only look at opportunities that have a stage of Stage 5 Closed Won. So we're bound to see a smaller total. I'm not going to cover how to build summary views in this tutorial, but just remember that you can build multiple summaries within each report if you want, and summaries allow you to group and subtotal your data in a way that you can't do in your details report. Any information you want to appear in your summary must appear in your details view. And there's that performance year-to-date report that we were just looking at. I can do what we call drill into these figures. I can drill into John Saunders' figures. And what that's doing is opening up a filtered view of whichever report I based this summary on, which for me was the details view. So to recap, all reports will have a details view, and you can add grand totals to that view, but not subtotals, for which you'd need a summary view. You can have multiple summary views. Think of it like the summary view having a parent view, and that parent view might have a parent view too. You can add criteria to each summary view, but it will always inherit the criteria in its parent, its grandparent, and so on. You can build various sorts of charts, but by their very nature, charts need data that's been grouped together, so you can only create them against summary views. That's some insight into the structure of a Workbooks report. Do watch our other tutorials to learn more about building a details report, introducing a summary, joining your report data to other record types, and many other topics. You'll also find help on our knowledge base if you go to workbooks.com/help/reporting. Thanks for watching.